Good morning, my dear students. Today's topic of discussion is glaucoma. So let us start with the structure of eye. You see the different points have been located in a specific manner. This part is called cornea. This is the lens. This part is occupied by aqueous humor, which is basically the cornea is an avascular organ. So if you have to measure drug concentration or bioavailability of a drug, you have to measure it at the level of aqueous humor. Though it is not blood, but it's a biological fluid. So you can measure bioavailability at that portion. These are zonual fibers. This part is the posterior one, so it's a vitreous humor. This part is called the ciliary muscles. The optic nerves are here. Light is coming via pupil. This is the pupil, and it is being pointed at the retina, and this part is called fovea, and this outermost covering is called the sclera, and here comes the optic nerve. So this is the basic structure of eye. Now when we look at this, we are seeing there is a canal of Schlemm, which is basically present here in the sclera. This part is the trabecular meshwork, and here there are some certain kind of pores through which there's a chance of drainage of aqueous humor. It is being done normally properly in a person who is having normal intraocular pressure. This is the dilator one, the dilator pupillary. This is the sphincter pupillary. This part is anterior chamber. This part is basically lens. This is the ciliary muscle. This part is the ciliary epithelium. Different alpha, beta, the receptors are being present here. We have already shown in the autonomic nervous system the distribution of receptors at different places of eye, including ciliary epithelium, and this is iris. So when we are looking at this structure, we are seeing the zonual fibers which are from the lens capsule joining this ciliary stroma. These are pigmented cells, and the ciliary epithelium is basically consists of the pigmented and non-pigmented cells. So the stretch is being maintained by these zonular fibers, and this stretch is also operating while the drainage of the fluid, that is aqueous humor. This is the pore through which water is being coming out, and here we'll see that sodium bicarbonate is being synthesized, or rather it is being dissociated by carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So that is the place. This place is basically ciliary epithelium. Now these are the distributions of receptors. Here you see the alpha 1 receptor, the ciliary blood vessels. These are the ciliary blood vessels. These are ciliary body epithelium. These are alpha 2 receptors. They also have certain kind of role in maintaining the normal intraocular pressure. This is the distribution of beta 2 receptor, and this is the presence of carbonic anhydrase enzyme, which is responsible for dissociation of sodium bicarbonate as well as H2CO3, rather, that is a weak acid which is being converted to H plus and HCO3 minus by this enzyme. So mostly this is being surrounded, or this is being impacted by the adrenergic receptors. It's basically this epithelium is under the control of the adrenergic receptors, the alpha 1 and 2 and the beta 2 receptors, and these ciliary body epithelium will ultimately determine how much is going to be the secretion. So alpha 1 will constrict ciliary vessel, and therefore the aqueous production is going to be decreased. Alpha 2 present on the epithelium and decrease aqueous production, hence the net effect is again the synthesis of aqueous humor is going to be decreased. Whereas beta 2, if you give some medications like beta 2 receptor agonist, then it will increase cyclic AMP and the synthesis of aqueous humor is going to be increased. So alpha is basically causing decrease in the synthesis of aqueous humor, and beta 2 is causing increase in the synthesis of aqueous humor. So alpha is responsible for decrease, beta is responsible for increase. Obviously the specification is there, alpha 1 and alpha 2, they have different kind of roles, but doing the same thing, decreasing aqueous humor, whereas beta 2 is just doing the opposite, increasing aqueous humor. Now what is glaucoma? Glaucoma is the second most frequent cause of blindness in the world and is a disease of unknown origin. It is characterized by progressive degeneration of retinal ganglion cells and optic nerve fibers. Usually it is accompanied by increased intraocular pressure, but not always. You can't say that always it will be associated with intraocular pressure. If untreated, it may lead to optic neuropathy, which will lead to loss of optic nerve tissue, excavation or cupping of the ophthalmoscopically visible optic nerve head, and this may be accompanied by loss of vision. Most forms of glaucoma are painless initially, and the loss of vision is basically gradual or insidious. If diagnosed and treated early, most patients retain good vision. Hence, the reduction in the intraocular pressure may protect against the damage to the optic nerve head. So, its management is best left on the specialist, that means the ophthalmologist, who is specially trained or having a postgraduate degree in or special training in glaucoma and eye. So, glaucoma can be classified into different types: the open angle glaucoma, the closed angle glaucoma, congenital glaucoma, and drug induced glaucoma. The condition may be either primary or secondary. The etiology of primary glaucoma is not known. The common causes of secondary glaucoma include inflammation like iritis, iridocyclitis, neurovascularization, pigment dispersion syndrome, and drugs. Our main focus in the discussion of this topic glaucoma is the primary glaucoma. So, the intraocular pressure is basically in most of the cases increase, and it's raised more than 20, more than 21 millimeters of mercury, and intraocular tension in most of the cases the etiology is also not known. So, the chief therapeutic measure is to lower the intraocular tension either by reducing the secretion of aqueous humor. So, one thing you can do, you can reduce the secretion. As I said, the alpha receptors are responsible for increased secretion, decreased secretion, and betas are for increased secretion. So, you can reduce the secretion of aqueous humor, or you can increase or promote its drainage. So, these are the two ways by which you can reduce intraocular tension. It retards progression of the optic nerve damage even in normal low intraocular tension if you lower the intraocular tension. The site of formation and the pathway of drainage of aqueous humor, as well as its sites of action of the anti-glaucoma drug, will be definitely shown in few of the other slides. So, two things are important. One is the UV scleral outflow, and another one is drainage via iridocorneal angle. So major amounts of aqueous humor, almost 90%, these are drained through trabecular route, while 10% only fluid passes through the connective tissues and it's within the ciliary muscle, and then via suprachoroid into the episcleral vessels, that is called uvuloscleral outflow. So the two things are important. Once more I am repeating. One is the uvuloscleral outflow is only 10%, and 90% of the fluid drains through the trabecular route, that is the trabecular outflow. So that is 90%, and uvuloscleral outflow is only 10%. So again repeating the same thing, glaucoma refers to a group of disease characterized by optic neuropathy, specific pattern of visual field defect, and it leads to raised intraocular tension or pressure, but it's not happened always. But many of the times we have been seeing that it is more than 21 millimeter of mercury. Optic nerve damage is one of the characteristic feature, increased IOP and visual field loss. So that is the triad of glaucoma. While introduction I have mentioned that glaucoma can be classified into many types, and we are only primarily focusing on primary open angle and angle closure glaucoma. So we'll probably concentrate on these two, rather skipping this part, which are probably the part of postgraduate discussion in the specialization. If somebody is doing postgraduate in eye, they will probably have to go through this congenital glaucoma, secondary glaucoma, pigmentary glaucoma, and normal tension glaucoma. So the primary open angle glaucoma, here pressure builds where the drainage system is blocked, and thus increasing pressure presses against the optic nerve and causes a gradual loss of sight. So you just see how gradually the pressure is leading to total loss of vision. The visual field is lost. There is one test, I forget the name of the test, that is being done, and you used to see that whether the visual fields at different sites are being lost or not. So with that test we can identify, even at the initial stage, some part, maybe the upper part of one eye, but the lower part, and the person used to place eyes in a particular instrument, and they have to identify the different spots, and with that we can spot the or localize the site which lost their vision or which are black. So let's come to angle closure glaucoma. Mydriasis occurs in an eye with narrow hydrocorneal angle, and the iris makes contact with the lens, blocking passage of aqueous humor from posterior to anterior chamber. So it's very simple. Pressure builds up behind the iris, and which bulges forward and closes the iridocorneal angle, and thus blocking the aqueous flow. So when we are prescribing drugs like acetylcholine, so drugs like pilocarpine or physostigmine, they will make this iris thin, pulls it away and from the lens, and it removing the pupillary block. This is the pupillary block. This block is being removed, and hence restoring aqueous drainage. So this is the mechanism by which this is being blocked here, and by pulling this myotics will help in the proper aqueous drainage through iridocorneal angle. Classification of different anti-glaucoma drugs, and it can be classified into many types. The beta blockers, the examples are timolol, cartilol, betaxolol, levobunolol. So we have mentioned 4 of these. How these things are being a little bit different from each other, we can discuss this in brief. The timolol is basically a prototype of ocular beta blocker, a non-selective beta 1 plus beta 2 blocker, and has no local anesthetic or intrinsic sympathomimetic activity. The ocular hypotensive action becomes evident within 1 hour and lasts for 12 hours. After chronic dosing, you will see that the action is smooth and well sustained. Some effect of intraocular tension persists for 1 to 2 weeks. This feature, in contrast to pilocarpine drop, which is a miotic, gives a high level of clinical safety, and 1 or 2 missed doses will not affect intraocular tension. Whereas betaxolol is basically a beta 1 selective blocker. It's a selective beta blocker, offering the advantage of less bronchopulmonary and probably cardiac, central, and metabolic side effects. So these are reducing intraocular tension by blocking some of the calcium channels and reducing sodium calcium influx. Basically, beta blockers are decreasing aqueous secretion, whereas levobunolol is recently been introduced as a once daily alternative to timolol. The ocular and systemic side effects are very similar to timolol, except for its duration of action is longer. As a whole, the beta adrenergic blockers, the topical ones, have been the first line drug, but recently these prostaglandin analogs like latanoprost and bimatoprost are replacing beta blockers as a first line drug in clinical practice. But these PGF2 alpha analogs are, though they are preferred drug, but they are very costly. So even in case of poor people, considering the cost benefit ratio, many of the clinicians are prescribing beta blockers as a first line drug. Beta blockers do not affect pupil size, tone of ciliary muscles. They are basically going to be, or outflow facility. They have no effect on that. They lower by reducing aqueous formation. That is the most important thing. So they are basically reducing the aqueous formation, and that is their primary mechanism of action. Whereas the prostaglandin analogs are basically increasing trabecular outflow, and they are increasing uveroscleral outflow. So both 90% and 10% being increased by the prostaglandin analogs. So next comes the non-selective alpha 2 selective agonists, the adrenergic agonists like brimonidine, apraclonidine. These are drugs like clonidine. Beside these, there are non-selective ones like adrenaline, dipivefrin. These are also being used as topical drop in glaucoma. So dipivefrin is a prodrug of adrenaline. It penetrates cornea. It's very important that the drug should penetrate cornea, because acetylcholine is basically having a quaternary structure, and therefore it is an ester. So it's not possible for acetylcholine to penetrate cornea. But these drugs will penetrate cornea, especially dipivefrin, and it is hydrolyzed by esterases present there into adrenaline, which itself has a poor corneal penetration. So that is the reason why it is a prodrug, and it is acting better than epinephrine, which adrenaline is not penetrating cornea in that manner, or in a very good quantity, or in a very good volume, and it causes ocular smarting, reactive hyperemia. They release the adrenaline from dipivefrin, they are augmenting the uveroscleral outflow. So their function as a group is to increase trabecular outflow, increase uveroscleral outflow. Both 90% and 10% outflow are being increased, as well as they are decreasing aqueous humor, because they have a specific role. They are beta 2 agonist, and I told you that these drugs, beta 2 receptor mediated increase in hydraulic conductivity of trabecular filtering cells, will happen with this. As they are alpha 1 and alpha 2 receptor agonist, because adrenaline has action on both alpha and beta receptor, they will reduce aqueous formation. So these are the probably group of drugs which are having action on everything. They are reducing aqueous formation, they are increasing trabecular outflow, and therefore this action is mediated, the beta 2 receptor mediated action, and an increase in hydraulic conductivity of trabecular filtering cells. Dipiveprin is a better tolerated drug than adrenaline as it's a prodrug, and dipiveprin still produces significant ocular burning and other side effects. Whereas in case of apraclonidine, it's a polar clonidine congener. Clonidine is given as an antihypertensive drug, but this one is given, apraclonidine is given in glaucoma. They does not cross blood-brain barrier. They apply topically and lowers intraocular tension by almost 25%. The mechanism is almost similar. As I said, they are belonging to the same group. It decreases aqueous formation by primary alpha 2 and subsidiary alpha 1 action in the ciliary body. Itching, some dermatitis, conjunctivitis are the common side effects or adverse drug reaction of this one. So its use nowadays has been restricted because there are options of short-term control of spikes of intraocular tension after laser trabeculoplasty or iridotomy. Then the prostaglandin analogs, which I said that primarily acting by, and it's a first line drug. If you can afford, it's a first line drug, having having effect on the trabecular outflow, increasing trabecular outflow as well as uveoscleral outflow. So both 90% and 10%, total 100% outflow is being increased by these kind of drugs. They lower intraocular tension without inducing ocular inflammation. That is the advantage of this group of drugs. It possibly by increasing permeability of tissues in ciliary muscles or by an action on episcleral vessels, an effect on trabecular outflow has also been demonstrated. Ciliary body is having COX-2, cyclooxygenase 2 enzyme, which I will discuss in relation to non-steroidal and anti-inflammatory drugs. It has been found to be down-regulated in wide-angle glaucoma and indicating a physiological role of prostaglandins in aqueous humor diamonds. The most important one which we are prescribing is latanoplast. It is instilled in the eye, PGF2 derivative, ocular irritation and pain are relatively frequent, no systemic side effects, blurring of vision, increased iris pigmentation, thickening, darkening of eyelashes have been shown in some of the cases. Macular edema can develop during treatment with any PGF2 analog, especially in aphakic patients. A watch should be kept to detect it early. You will see there is a very good efficacy, once daily application and absence of systemic complications of prostaglandin analogs make it a first choice drug in open angle glaucoma. And as I said, high cost is the main disadvantage of this kind of drugs. The carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, as I have shown the physiology, there is a part where carbonic anhydrase is playing its role and H2CO3 is converted to H plus and HCO3 minus. The oral treatment with acetazolamide or dorzolamide from the same group, they are reducing aqueous formation. So their role is to decrease aqueous formation. They have no role in increasing trabecular outflow or uveoscleral outflow. They are only decreasing aqueous formation. It is used to supplement ocular hypotensive drugs. So whenever a first line drug, it is used with prostaglandin analogs like latanoplast or with beta blockers, having some systemic side effects like paresthesia, anorexia, hypokalemia. Dorzolamide obviously is a better one, and it is showing some kind of systemic side effects of acetazolamide. The myotics are the cholinergic agents. The pilocarpine, the physostigmine, the carbachol, these are the common examples of myotics. Previously in 70s, in 1980s, these topical pilocarpine alone or in combination with anticholinergics like physostigmine were the standard anti-glaucoma drug, but they are now being replaced by beta blockers and prostaglandin analog like latanoprost. They are now used only in last option, and in open angle glaucoma they lower intraocular tension by increasing ciliary muscle tone, thereby improving patency of the trabecule. The current approach to treatment of open angle glaucoma can be summarized as start monotherapy with latanoprost, another prostaglandin analog, or a topical beta blocker. If target intraocular tension is not attained, change over to the alternative drug or use both the above concurrently. So you can combine beta blocker with prostaglandin analog. Then brimonidine, dorzolamide can be used only when they are the patient is having contraindication to prostaglandin analogs or to beta blockers. Topical miotics and oral acetazolamide are added only as the last resort. So this is basically the last resort, these carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. But many of the patients I have seen, they have been on 2-3 drugs, even single drug or a combination of drugs are not sufficient, and they are having probably drug reactions to any of the agents. Even I have seen a patient who is taking timolol, basically this blocker, beta blocker, which is causing bradycardia, but timolol is given as an eye drop. So ideally, its effect, the systemic effect is comparatively minimal to the other beta blockers which are given by oral route. But still I have seen that timolol is causing severe bradycardia in few patients. So drug treatment is always individualized. There are systemic drugs like carbonic anhydrase inhibitors and the osmotic agents like mannitol and glycerin. In case of angle closure glaucoma or narrow angle glaucoma, or narrow angle glaucoma, the individuals with a narrow iridocorneal angle and shallow anterior chamber, the intraocular tension remains normal until an attack is precipitated. Usually by mydriasis, rises rapidly to very high values. It is an emergent condition, and marked congestion of eyes and severe headache is the characteristic of this. How will you treat this? If I go back to the previous slide, the mannitol, hypertonic mannitol given 20% via intravenous route, or the acetazolamide 0.5 gram IV can be given, or the miotic should be started once the intraocular tension starts falling due to the above intravenous therapy. The pilocarpine is the drug of choice, instilled every 10 minutes initially, then at longer intervals. You can add topical beta blocker like timolol, 0.5% can be instilled in 12-hourly addition, and additionally you may add latanoprost and apraconidine at the end. So that is the angle closure glaucoma, and there the treatment of angle closure glaucoma is varying from that of primary open angle glaucoma. Drugs are used only to terminate the attack of angle closure glaucoma. Definitive treatment of angle closure glaucoma is surgery or laser iridotomy. Few of the cases who have chronic narrow angle glaucoma may be treated with miotic ocular hypotensive drugs for long periods, but often surgery, laser therapy is ultimately required. So let's check it out how these things are happening in the human eyes, the trabecular outflow and the uvuloscleral outflow. Look at the different drugs which are being affected at different places. Here is the miotic which is acting, the alpha agonist which is the ripivirine prodrug, the prostaglandin analog like latanoprost, the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors like dorzolamide, acetazolamide, alpha 2 agonists like brimonidine, beta blockers like timolol, and in acute angle closure glaucoma you have to use intravenous form of hypertonic mannitol, which is basically an osmotic diuretic. So this is the normal aqueous flow. Here you see this is the flow in case of open angle glaucoma, and this is the primary open angle glaucoma therapy when it is treated with timolol. So this is normal flow. Again I am repeating, this is normal flow, normal trabecular outflow, uveoscleral outflow. This is when the glaucoma occurs, when the pathology is dominating. This is the glaucoma, primary open angle glaucoma, and here we have prescribed the drug, and hence with timolol we are seeing this kind of flow. So with that I am concluding my presentation by showing the effect of another drug, that is timolol with latanoprost. It is further minimized, and here you see the difference between this flow and this flow. This flow is still being increased with the addition of latanoprost. So with this much I am concluding my presentation on glaucoma. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.